Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special Christmas bonus episode. And today, actually, not this week. I usually say this week, but today, because we have a new episode every day here in Christmas week, today we have with us the author of the book Human Business, Thomas Juli. Thomas will talk to us about his book, of course, and the new trend he hopes to start of creating a more human business. So, Thomas, welcome to the show. Absolutely. So Thomas is a human business architect. His vision is to help establish human business as the new paradigm by the year 2030. That's a mighty ambitious calling there that you have, Thomas. So you wrote a book called Human Business, of course, where you explain a lot more about what that means and what you're trying to achieve. But give us a quick intro to what you call human business.
Well, actually, the correct title is The Spirit of Human Business. What's human business? Human business is all about generating value for and by people. So it's not business as machinery, it's business as an organism. And it's like, it's not just generating value for shareholders, it's generating value for those who matter the most, those who actually are responsible and for running the show. Those without them, there wouldn't be any business.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this topic that we bring here, the topic of your book, is in the context of business agility. So we will definitely dive into that and talk a lot more about, how this human business paradigm also helps with business agility. But for starters, what got you started? Like, what was the thing that kind of triggered in you the desire, the will to write a book on the topic of human business?
Well, actually, I have to admit the working title in the beginning wasn't even human business or the spirit of human business. The working title was Being Human in the Digital Age. And this was actually really was what I was mostly interested in, because we live in the digital age with all the technology and what have you. And it's like people are more and more overwhelmed by digital. And I raised the question, okay, what does it mean to me? Actually, to me personally, I mean, I didn't want to teach, but I want to explore what is it that I still can discover. So, writing especially the first part of the book about becoming human again, it was almost like a therapy, because I raised some questions, and this is how I've written my previous book a couple of years ago. I raised a number of questions. And then I just kind of entered the flow, and then I just started writing whatever came out of me. And sometimes I was actually sometimes astonished by what I wrote down there. So you find some of the chapters are about asking the right questions, or another chapter is entitled "Boys Don't Cry, Men Do." This is about rediscovering emotions, and then later on I explain how this can help us in business or in daily work. There is a chapter on dancing life, and so it was kind of like a play. It was exploring what's out there, what's in me, and I tried to contrast it with the outside world. And then later on, when I wrote the first part of the book, I thought, okay, now for some people this may be even too esoteric and it's too far-fetched. How can I relate it to work? So I first looked into the project setting, and then later in a business setting. And this basically how the concept of human business as a whole evolved.
You said you did a little bit of discovery as you were writing that first part of the book. What were some of the insights that you got as you went through that process?
I think we are being raised as functional entities of functional resources. We just have to function in our world. I mean, it starts in kindergarten, you can say, or definitely in school, where you just have to have a curriculum. You have to fulfill the curriculum. You have to memorize certain things. And we are getting prepared for the business world, where we're expected to function. We're human resources. And, and this is when we are treating each other as a resource, then eventually we will have to compete with other resources, such as machines or computers. And I'm not convinced that we are capable of doing this. And so therefore I thought, okay, what about us? Where do we fit in? And am I a resource, or is there something more? I wish I raised these questions earlier in my life, because I was a functioning resource for way too long, way too many years. And it's like, what have I sacrificed or what have I lost? I think I lost central elements of my own humanity. And this actually has to do something also with emotions, like who I am, who I really am. Like my kids, they don't care if I'm a project manager, if I'm a scrum master, or if I code, or if I'm an executive. No, they see me as their dad, and we have a great time. And what really matters most in our life. And this is like when you look into the mirror and you find out, okay, what is it that really matters to you? What's really important? You come to a point where you probably question certain roles and expectations.
This questioning, perhaps even discovering out of that questioning, is a process that, of course, we're very used to when it comes to external things, like how to get better as a team, how to improve the process, how to deliver a better product. But what I'm hearing from you is that you're talking about questioning in the sense of kind of centering our existence within the business, right? Like it's not, and this is me interpreting, so I might be wrong, but I did want to hear your thoughts on this. It's not about separating from business. It's about, if I understand you correctly, about figuring out what our role is in the business so that the business may work for us as well as we work for them.
Yeah, very true. But of course, when we are there to serve our customers, and it's like without customers, we're out of business, and it's not sufficient anymore just to satisfy our customers. We have to delight them. That means we have to understand their needs, and this goes a little deeper. People say, well, we have to generate value for our customers and business. I totally agree, but what about generating value for the employees? See, the thing is, who actually is responsible for creating the value? It's not the customers, it's not the business, it's actually the employees. So why don't we just talk more about us, about the employees, or other people working? When you run your own business, it just would be you. What kind of environment you need, where you can perform best? What actually that excites you, that delights you? How can you bring in the skills you have, the talents? How can you expand those? And those are the questions which I think also very important.
Absolutely. Looking at this as employees being an active part of the business, not just from the perspective of generating value, but also from the perspective of making the business better, making it more agile, of course, delighting customers, but also creating an environment where they can thrive as people. Is that how you describe it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So let's take that to the topic of this Christmas special episode. So business agility. I imagine that in the book you also explore how a more human business can also become a more agile business. How do you link this to human business and business agility?
Well, the things like what I use the image of a metamorphosis. When you have a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And the traditional business being the caterpillar is like focus on the business, on the enterprise. You have profit maximization. You just want to eat. And it's like, everything's about processes and efficiency. And it's just like machinery. And in today's world, well, we can't do this anymore because we cannot plan everything ahead of us. I mean, maybe, a couple of months, sometimes a year or 2 years, but we do not know what the world will look like in, say, 3, 4, or 5 years. So this VUCA world where we have volatile, complex, uncertain, ambiguous, is like, how can we cope with it? And Agile gives us some guidance, I believe. And this is like what's like the transformation starts when you have an Agile company which focus on the customer side of the enterprise, where you generating value on iterations and increments, and it just like changes everything. And it's not just like a methodology; it's not so much more, because the whole DNA of a business starts being transformed. And yet, I'm saying this is not it. I'm saying you have to go a step further, and it's like at the center of our business is not the business, it's not the customers, actually people. Because customers are people, and we have the employees, and then we have the community, and you have society, you have the environment. So that means, like, in a complex environment, if you want to survive, if you want to thrive in the business world, you have to look at the whole picture, and that's why the focus is on people. And now with business agility, it's a wonderful, I should say, a catalyst or maybe an accelerator in this transformation. Steve Denning, whom I interviewed in the book, he said, like, well, right now, especially in today's world, he doesn't see really any alternative to agile anymore. I mean, if you can plan, if you run your business in a certain environment, and actually there are still some businesses where there is no hardly any competition, which is, where you can still plan ahead and there are not many changes. That's fine. But most of our business, that's not the case, where everything is, we're experiencing rapid change. So we have to be agile. And that's why I believe that business agility is the accelerator in today's world and facing our challenges.
Great that you mentioned Avoca World. We have an episode, I'll put the link on the show notes, with Nick Horney, where we talk about his work on agility, leadership, fitness. And of course, in Avoca World, he also explains the origin of the Avoca acronym in that podcast. I'll put the link in the show notes. When you talk about business agility as kind of the accelerator of this transformation, I see it also as a way to make the businesses adapt to this new reality. Let me give an example of where human business, I think, is kind of becoming the driver. We just went through, or are going through at this moment, a worldwide pandemic, the corona or COVID-19 pandemic, that has severely transformed many industries. For example, where I live, the restaurant business cannot hire people. They could open, but there's not enough people wanting to work in restaurants anymore. So they can't hire people anymore, right? Many of the service organizations in the world are working remote, right? That's totally transformed how we work with each other, the way we create relationships with our colleagues, the way we collaborate, like all of that is changing. And one of the things that highlights for me is that as we create more human businesses, and as we tackle this VUCA world, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, the ambiguity, we need to become more agile, meaning that we need to transform as a matter of fact, right? Like this becomes kind of the day-to-day of leaders all over the world in all kinds of businesses. So the way I read that phrase, business agility as an accelerator of the transformation, is almost like the world is recognizing that transformation, meaning adaptation to new reality, has become the de facto standard for working, and business agility is kind of the way we look at that, right? Like the way the ability to adapt to what's coming at us. That's how I heard it. Is that what you meant?
Yes. You can say maybe it's a compass. You don't have a map. You don't have a GPS, which tells you exactly this way you have to go, but you have a compass. It gives you an overall direction. You have something you can focus on, and it gives you some form of orientation. And you still have to do the work. It's not just like I'm an agile. I'm going to training. I'm certified. No, we're agile. No, this is like you still have to do something. About it. You have to apply it, and you have to learn how to use it, and you have to learn how to expand it and how to adapt it to your needs. There's a saying, a fool with a tool is still a fool. And so if a fool goes to an agile training but doesn't get how it changes the way of approaching business, the fool is still a fool.
Absolutely. And agile can become that tool, right? And I was wondering, you bring a different perspective, right? The whole idea of human business is going beyond agile. Agile is part
Yes.
of it, but it's not about being agile. It's about other things as well. So how do you see that? How do you see this interacting, in the real world? This focus on building a more human business and the focus on being adaptive, right? Change, because you can also apply the machine metaphor, if you will, to adaptability. Right? You can't change it that fast, but you can build a machine that just moves people around, let's say, when it comes to, changing strategy. Okay, you just move people around. You don't necessarily treat them as an organism, as a sentient, capable organism.
Let's look at let's say a team. Let's say a Scrum team or an Agile team. Okay, of course you can also look at the business, but let's go to the micro level where you have a team of say 8 to 10 people or so, and then you have 2 Scrum teams, and the one is it's working all right, and the other one is like a high performing team. And what's the difference? Maybe it's not the technology. It's in most cases it's not the methodology. What matters is the interaction in the team, how they work with each other. And this is like the human aspects. My hypothesis and my observation is like, regardless of what, let's say, approach or framework you're using in a team, in a project team, whenever you have a high performing team, it's because of the human aspects, because people they feel being part of something bigger. They identify with the purpose, the vision, the goals of the project. They can bring in some of their own talents. They can learn. They interact with each other. They are being respected. And this is what I call a wow project, by the way. This is like, these are the human elements. And the nice thing, the cool thing is, these elements, they do not cost anything. They're already part of us. They're intrinsic. It's like inside of us. Except there's one thing we have to give up, and that's the idea we are a resource. We are machines. We just have to function. If we want to be creative, if we want to be innovative, we have to make mistakes. So we need to create the space for making mistakes. It is relatively safe, and we're still being challenged, and that we can explore, that we can use our skills or the technology, what have you. But the link of all of the methodologies, etc., is the human aspect. And this is actually within us. And it can start with asking people, okay, what is it that you're interested in? Why are you on this project in the first place? What do you want to learn? How can we find ways that your motivation overlaps with the motivation of the project or with your teammates? And it's like, do you need a special budget for it? No, you do not. But you just have to ask the right questions.
And I think we should explore that a bit more. We already referred to these different metaphors, right? Like the 20th century type of business, which you call the machine type of business, and the 21st century, which you call the human network. So let's take that forward. Explain that contrast and why it's so important in your perspective.
I think the 20th century, business is more like a machine where, like I said, the focus is on the company. Whereas in human business, the focus on the humans. Then the machine looks at, or the traditional business looks at, we want to produce and we want to sell products and services. We care for features and products and what have you. And a human business has a more, holistic view on value generation. We're looking at how can we benefit our customers, employees, the company, the environment, the society. So it's much more holistic. And yet it's still focused. Then you look at the workplace organization, and a traditional business, at the machinery, you have like linear organizations. You have hierarchies. Maybe sometimes you have matrix organizations. Humans are seen as a resource, and they just have to function. So this is kind of the Tayloristic approach. It's not about the individual; it's all about the business. Whereas in a human business, it's you design a space, a human or workspace, which is characterized by trust and respect. I like to refer to this as a happy workplace. So this is where you have small, multidisciplinary teams. Ideally, they're autonomous, self-organizing. You don't have static hierarchies, but you have organically grown structures which are adaptive, that are fluid, they're dynamic. So this is like completely different. That's why it's more like an organism. With respect to innovation, a traditional company will focus on products and processes. And then there is like the focus on rapid, incremental changes, driven often by cost reduction and profit maximization. I mean, nothing wrong with it, but this is like, traditionally, this has been the focus. In a human business, it's more this, there you have also a holistic understanding of innovation. You look at the continuous and holistic improvement with respect to people, products, and processes. I like to say products and processes do not innovate. People do. So let's talk about people innovation. So it's people innovation, you have product innovation and process innovation. But bring in the people innovation into the equation and see how it can change things. And then you look at the results, the bottom line. In traditional businesses, especially when they're publicly traded, that focuses on short-term profits. EBIT, you want to raise the share prices. Stock market value is very important. This is still important in the human business, but it's not at the core. Again, you look at the overall value creation and you balance short, mid, and long-term goals and yields. And, this is another differentiator of a human business to a traditional business. And that's why overall, I come business as a machine or a machinery, and a human business as a human network, which is flexible, which is faster, more adaptive, and therefore can cope with today's challenges so much better.
one of the concepts that requires that flexibility and adaptability is, of course, complexity, right? Like the lack of predictability of what's coming in the near future. Sometimes, let's just imagine ourselves in February 2020 and planning our maybe the rest of the year or the next quarter or whatever, and then March the lockdown hits and all your plans are gone. Not only that, but the team is no longer in the office, so you can't talk to them, right? Like you have to come up with different abilities, different ways to communicate and collaborate, and so on and so forth. Like that's a great example that is quite short or quite recent in time that we can remember and even feel perhaps what that meant for us. And as I was reading through the summary of the book, the thing that struck me is that human network. And if we could set it up, let's imagine we can set it up, right? Like a human network that is functioning, that is flexible, that is adaptive, that is focusing on the welfare of the people in the company as well as the benefit and the value of the customers of the company would be the best way to handle this level of complexity.
Absolutely, and of course the question like how can you plan it top down? And I'm skeptical. And yet, without the blessing of the top, it's virtually impossible to even think of building a network. You can build like a structure which helps evolve it. So, like, what kind of values and principles do you embrace? I'd say I'm a fan of projects, because I've been working in the project environments for decades, and it's kind of like a microcosm of business. And this is where you can shape your immediate environment. That's why I like them so much, and you can see the results so much faster. The question is like, do you still work a project team, or a team can still work in a site? How do you share information with the outside world? How can you build a network? And the more project teams they interact with each other, the more of a network you eventually will have. Once you have this network, the question is like, what happens to the traditional hierarchy? Well, say right now I'm working in a huge corporation with more than 150,000 people working for this corporation. It's very difficult to change this Goliath within, say, a couple of years. And I still believe it's possible, but it takes a bit longer. And it's like a tanker. You want to reach out to the skeptics, and you have to talk their language. So let's say you reach out to traditional HR, which I think HR is the wrong term because it talks about human resources, but they understand it's about people. So embrace them. So maybe you work doing a project with them together, or you just invite them to your project, to your reviews and planning, and see how you interact. Then you have maybe a works council. You have skeptical managers, and you show them the value you are generating, because I think skeptics can best be convinced by results. And this way, it becomes more concrete. Now, of course, you can come up with KPIs or OKRs and what have you. That's fine. If you like, go for it. But I think the currency of change is stories. Share stories. How we know, in this case, for example, how agile or human business aspects, how they can make a difference to the daily life, to the customer, to the business, to everyone involved, and share stories. The more stories, the better, because this is something people can relate to.
And I imagine that sharing stories is one way in which we can actually get started applying these ideas, even within our teams, right? Like we don't need to start with changing large organizations. But for the Scrum Masters listening to us today, perhaps the most important question is exactly that. Like, how do I get started in my team? So, Thomas, what would be your guidance for those of us that want to get started applying some of these ideas in our own teams?
A couple of years ago, when I was involved, I read a lot about happiness research. And I thought, okay, here's the thing. What can we do? How can I actually incorporate it in my daily life? And it started with a daily, with a stand up in the morning, usually in the morning, the 15 minutes where we ask the famous 3 questions. What have I accomplished yesterday? What am I about to do today? And where do I need help? Where do you see issues or risk? I added a 4th question. And the 4th question was, what makes me happy today? And back then, it was prior to COVID. We had like a Kanban board. We worked with stickies. And we had like just like all other task we were working on. We put it on a sticky note, our happiness note, and put it on the wall. And the next day, we asked, okay, have you accomplished your happiness sticky? And we talked about just like as if it were another work package. and we collected them. So after a while, we had like a happiness wall, which was really interesting because like you get an idea of what kind of environment do we need for individuals or the team to be happy. And this need not be related to work. It could be anything. When I say what makes me happy today, I mean, maybe it's related to work. Maybe it's like I'm looking forward to returning home, or do a workout, what have you. It doesn't matter. It's like happiness is very subjective. It's very individual, but you collect it. If people have a hard time thinking of what makes me happy, you can also ask, what am I grateful for today? And this too just could be a fifth question you like. It's very individual, but this way you change the energy in the team, and you start the day with something human. It's kind of like a human check-in. I introduced the fourth question to a team of engineers a couple of years ago, and really typical engineers. I think there was one woman, but only guys, German engineers. And I thought like they will probably kick me out when I introduced this question. I thought they looked
I
at
can
it.
imagine their faces.
Yeah, it's like, what have you. Anyway, I was gone for a couple of days, and then I returned to that daily. And actually, they started with this question: what makes me happy today?
Wow.
And they didn't add another 5 minutes. No, they stayed within the limit of 15 minutes. But they said, and it's like, why do you start with this question? It's like, well, no, this way the whole atmosphere changes right immediately. And this is actually what really matters the most, because sometimes it's like, when I know what makes my colleague happy, who knows, maybe I can help him or her to be happy. And this actually makes him happier and myself too. And it's like, therefore, it's like we have a happy workplace. And when we have a happy workplace, we can work faster, we can be more productive, we have more fun, it's more joyful. And so it's a win-win-win situation. So this very simple question, what makes me happy, or makes you happy, or what am I grateful for, can make a huge difference. And it just work with it for a week or 2 weeks, and then the week after, return to the three questions and see if the atmosphere and the output changes. I guarantee you, or I'm pretty sure that you will return to the fourth question, to the happiness question again, because it has a huge impact on the bottom line.
Absolutely. And such a simple and inspiring way to get started. So thank you for that story, Thomas. Now, we know you wrote a book that's The Spirit of Human Business, with a foreword by Stephen Denning, and we'll put a link on the show notes. And that's a great resource for our Scrum Masters to get started. But what's another resource that you can share with our audience that will help them, dive deeper into the topic and learn some more tools that they can apply in their day-to-day work?
Well, there is, since we're talking about business agility, I highly recommend the website of the Business Agility Institute, and actually also become a member of the Business Agility Institute, because you find so many wonderful resources. That's the first stop, I'd say. Then my own website is motivatetobe.com, and also the blog. And you can find quite a few articles and posts also on LinkedIn, where I'm quite active. I have some articles on Medium, but I'd say again, Business Agility Institute, my own website, Motivate to Be, and LinkedIn. That's a very good start.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link to all of those in the show notes. And why not, listeners out there, reach out to Thomas and asking for some more interesting stories about how this change, the human business change, can get started in our day-to-day work. Thomas, it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.